Hello and welcome to the WonderBaba podcast. My name is Sheena Mitchell. I'm a pharmacist and mum of 3. I'm here to chat all about child and family health. I combine healthcare and practical advice to help you on your parenting journey. I really hope you enjoy the show. If you enjoy listening to a WonderBaba podcast, I'd be really grateful if you could follow or subscribe and leave a review. It really helps to support the show. Thank you. Today I am joined by Siobhan Carroll from Act for Meningitis. Siobhan, can you tell me a little bit about Act for Meningitis and your role in it?
Hi Sheena. So I suppose I'll start at the beginning and talk you through where the charity began and the reasons behind it. So in April 2008, I was pregnant with, which we knew it was going to be a little boy, and Ava, who was 4, and Evan, who was 2 at the time, were at home with their dad. I wasn't feeling well and I went into the hospital and I had really bad headaches, and they decided to keep me in for the night to monitor me. So Ava went off to her Montessori that day and I said goodbye to her that morning. And at about 8-9 o'clock that night, I got a phone call from Ava's dad to say Ava was sick and she wasn't feeling well, and that he had given her Norfin or Calpol at the time. And I wasn't really that concerned.
What way was she feeling sick?
She was complaining of a sore tummy. She was complaining of a sore tummy and a bit of a headache. And I rang her actually at 9 o'clock and she told me about all she had learned about in the Nina that day. She learned about Africa. And she had a great day at school and she had been to Supermax with her granny and her little brother Evan. But there was nothing of concern, because kids at that age, you know, especially when they're in creche and stuff and Montessori, you know, or was picking up little bugs and stuff. And she'd been totally fine that morning when I was talking to her before she went off. And later on that night, Noel rang to say that she really wasn't getting any better, and he'd rang the out of hours service and said to them that she wasn't usually like this when she was sick, and that she had been vomiting and she was really restless. And they said to him, oh, there's loads of bugs going around, and you just keep an eye on her. See, was the light bothering her? The light wasn't bothering her. And just to check and see if there was any rash. No, there was nothing. And he brought her downstairs, and he rang an hour or 2 later again to say, she's still not right, I'm quite concerned. And they said, just keep an eye on her. So I was asleep in bed in the hospital in Galway, and my phone rang and Noel said, Ava's really, really sick. There's an ambulance on the way. And I couldn't understand. I had talked to her, you know, she had been fine all day. And what had been happening in the house, which I, found out after, was that Ava was lying in Noel's arms, and they were watching Tom and Jerry on the telly. And she said he was watching the telly, and he looked down and he thought it was a reflection of the telly on her face. And she just literally kind of started turning grey, and she just closed her eyes. And my mum had arrived at this stage, and he went knocking on doors for help. But it was the middle of the night and people were asleep, and the ambulance arrived. And I ran down to the front door of the hospital in Galway, and I can still picture it. And it was 14 years gone now, and I can still picture it. It was really, really quiet, which is so strange for, a hospital car park. And it was really dark, and I could hear an ambulance in the distance. And I remember thinking to myself, God, that ambulance is coming here really quickly. Someone's really, really sick. Not for 1 second thinking that it could be anything to do with Ava. And the ambulance pulled up, and I could see Noel sitting in the front seat, and the back doors opened, and a doctor went racing past me, and Noel just got out and he said, it's not good, Siobhan. And they did try, they raced past us with Ava, and they did try to bring her back, but she was gone. And they had us in a room mind us, because I was so heavily pregnant, and while they were trying to bring Ava back, and I remember seeing the priest walk towards us in the middle of A&E, and the consultant, and they said, "I'm really sorry," and they walked us into the room where Ava was, and I still remember that as well. There was complete silence in the room. There must have been about 16, 17, possibly even 20 staff in there, between doctors and nurses and consultants, and they all just stood back, and we just walked up, and there she was lying on the bed, and she was gone. Within, I would say, like 6 hours of being sick, we'd lost her to meningitis. And I suppose the only way to describe it is that our lives changed from that time on. 4 weeks after Noah was born, we knew we were having a boy, and Ava had picked the name Noah. And it was so difficult at the time, because Evan and Sophie shared a room, and he slept through it all. But he woke up in the morning, his sister was gone. That was his big sister he looked up to. She helped him, taught him how to walk. She helped him when he was really small, and that was it. Everything just changed for us on that night. And I suppose then we began our lives on a different journey.
Siobhan, I, like, as a mom, as a human, I'm listening to you here, and while I knew elements, of the story before, I just feel sick. Like, I can't start to imagine the horror of all that unfolding. And I know you're used to telling your story, and I've shivers now, but you were very heavily pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
You had obviously Evan at home in bed as well. So your husband, he went through that evening, and in a way I don't know which of you I feel more sorry for, because I know as a mum, not to be there is torture.
Absolutely.
And for him to try and make those decisions and make those calls, and to have to look back on that night and to try and to explain it to you, because I'm sure you wanted to go through every single aspect, and I can't imagine how hard it all was. And the way you describe Evan and Ava's relationship, so typical. Like, I had children the same kind of age apart, and it's so wonderful to see them interact in that way. In a way, it's nice that, Evan knows he had a big sister who played such an important part in his life. And I'm sure you talk about her all the time. And I think I see a little video that you did where Evan said, "This is my big sister Ava," And it's amazing. I'm speechless. Like, I'm so sorry. It seems stupid, but that's all I can say.
No, I know. And, it's something you don't think is ever going to happen to you. And like, the impact and the loss, and I suppose I call it now the ripple effect, the effect of losing Ava on us and her brother and her grandparents and her little friends that she had, and the community of, Galway, the shock, I think, that people, the suddenness and the speed of, and I do believe, and I'll still say, it literally can take you years to come out of that shock. And even, and you saying I've shared my story so many times, but still sometimes you sit back and think, did that really happen?
Yeah.
It was so horrific that night. Did that really happen? The way I wasn't there, I didn't get to hold her, I didn't get to say goodbye. And for Noel to be there and watch, his little girl like dying in his arms. And it can take a really long time to try and come to terms with, the both of us, for our own struggles, for those reasons, And I do know that she was looking for me that night. I do know. She said to Noel, where's Mammy? And like, I think that was probably one of the hardest things, I think, you know, for years, that I had to kind of come to terms with that.
But you know, right?
You know, I wasn't there for her, you know.
Like, and I can completely imagine that, because the only thing you want to do when your child is unwell, even just with something small, is hug them and love them,
Yeah,
and be there for them.
yeah.
But I suppose the most important thing for you to remember is that, and this is the importance of talking today, what Ava had was extremely aggressive, extremely quick. And that is the nature of bacterial meningitis. Yeah. And you were literally doing everything you could as a mother to, I suppose, ensure the safety of your unborn child, Noah.
Yeah.
And you're never going to say, I can't leave one child because I have to mind another. You look after whosever needs are greatest at that moment. And
absolutely,
as a mother of 3 myself, I know there's times that you're torn in two, you know?
Yeah.
You can't be everywhere at once.
No. And I know. And I know all that. And, you know, like, you know, I remember at the time so many people used to say to us, oh, time is a healer. And, you know, but like now I know all that's true. You know, I know all that, you know, but when you're living in that absolute nightmare, and it's just going around in your head constantly, but like time is a healer. And, you know, Sophie came along the year after, and she was the image of Ava. She's Sophie Ava, and she's the image of her. And the one thing I made the decision about was that my children's lives weren't going to change because my life changed. And I made that choice very, very soon on. I remember having a conversation with myself that their lives weren't going to change. So, you know, I did everything I could, you know, possibly for them to have as much of a normal life as they could, from going up to the play areas, going to the playgrounds, to doing all their sport, to doing everything, you know, their lives. I did the best I could for them.
That takes incredible strength. Do you find that in a way, obviously, I'm sure you had some immediate time to grieve, because, you know, at a funeral situation, everyone steps in the early days.
Yeah.
And they really do. But after that, you can be in a very dark place, and I can't imagine losing a child. But ultimately, like, I know even when my own father died suddenly 4 years ago, you know, it's not the same thing at all. But I remember I was grieving, and, you know, the kids are adorable in that they know Mommy's sad, you know, Dado died.
Yeah.
But they're still like, yeah, no, I'm hungry. Like, I'm having a fight with him.
Yeah.
I'm having a fight. And you're like, right, well, I suppose that's all you're going to let me have now. And in their own little way, they're so kind and they're so empathetic. And there was hugs and love. And I could see them looking at me. And ultimately, you're faced with going, what my choice is now to sit down on the couch and bawl solidly and alarm them, or to try and park grief for times that you can visit it when you're on your own and when you have time to actually think about things without being pulled out of.
True.
Yeah, you kind of have to.
No, because the day after the funeral, I had to get up with Evan and give him his breakfast. Yeah. And 4 weeks and a day after Ava died, Noah came along. And I don't remember much about that time. I don't really remember the labor. I don't remember much. All I do remember this part in the labor ward was the midwife, myself, and Noel, and me holding Noah, hugging each other, crying. in the labour ward. I remember that. And then I had to get up and start doing night feeds and, looking after another baby. And the nicest thing happened the night I went into labour with Sophie. The same midwife was on call. What were the chances? She was sent to me. She walked in that door. And I remember looking at me, she goes, Siobhan. I said, Tara. And she said, oh, I'm here to mind you. And I said, yeah, you are. And I remember saying to her, because we knew it was a little girl, I remember saying to her, please just mind her for me. Just, mind her for me. Get her here for me. And so like life was so busy, Sheena, like, and I can say now looking back, I never really had time to grieve. I really didn't. My life was too busy. I had babies and kids that needed me, that kind of way. And I met an amazing woman about 6 or 7 weeks after Ava died. And I was talking to her, and I remember her saying to me, I know, I understand. And I know I'd never like really sat back and thought about what a grieving mum or dad would look like. I didn't have anyone that had lost a child. And I didn't know what I visioned a grieving mother for me would look like. But this woman was sitting in front of me, and she had lost 2 children. And I said to her, how do you get through it? What do you do to get through it? And she said to me, you keep as busy as you can for as long as you can. Because she said, it's not in the first few weeks, it's not in the first year, maybe even 2 years, that the reality hits you of what's actually happened. And when the reality does finally hit you, she said, you're going to be in a stronger, better place to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, okay, that's what got her through it. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. And that's, I suppose, where, the idea came about to set up the charity, to do something to try and stop another family going through what we went through. And
amazing, positive, and I actually, look, let's talk about that, because it is an amazing charity. So how did you go about setting up Act for Meningitis? What were the first steps? How the hell do you start a charity?
Where does one start? I was a Montessori teacher. At the time we'd lost Ava and stuff, so I didn't know. So I still have I have my first diary, and I Googled how to set up a charity. That was as simple as it was. Googled how to set up a charity. And the most important thing was the name. So we chose Act for Meningitis. The Act actually stands for the Ava Carl Trust, but Act for Meningitis. And we want people to act if they suspect meningitis. Ava loved rainbows, and that's where our lovely logo came from. Her favourite song was Somewhere Over the Rainbow. She was always singing it in the car. And I remember about a week before she died, we were coming down the coast road in Ormore, and there was a rainbow in the sky. And I remember saying to me, why isn't there rainbows in the sky every day, Mom? And I was thinking, oh, that was your little message to me. So we have a rainbow as a sign of hope, because after the rain, the rainbow, the rainbow appears. And that's where the logo came from. And that's where the charity began. And I can never put into words the kindness and the support of people when I put it out there that I want to set up the charity. I can never, people that I had been in school with and hadn't seen in 10, 15 years, friends that I hung around with when I was small, everybody just wanted to help, and I mean, we set up, the very first thing was like we set up the Facebook page, announced about the charity. And it's 11 years now since July we set up the charity. But the kindness that we still get to this day, and the support that we still get to this day, people that have never been affected by meningitis but wanted to help us to make a difference, believed in what we were trying to do and to remember Ava. And it's just been so amazing, the support that we've been given over the years.
And it's a lovely thing for her to have such a wonderful legacy. Like Ava, in effect, I'm not giving you any credit now. Ava's out there saving lives. Do you know?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Creating
absolutely.
her rainbow awareness. And
Yes,
yeah, I
yes,
actually now, every time I see her logo, I have it here in front of me and I'm just smiling at it. It's
yeah.
so beautiful and hopeful.
That's what we want. Hope, hope. There is hope. That's what we want people to know that we're there. And I still remember the very first phone call I got from somebody who had read something we shared online or something, and or heard me do a talk and said, when my child got sick, I knew about meningitis. I went to the hospital, and because of you saved my child's life, or you had me. I acted because of what you told me to do when it was meningitis. And I still remember that phone call, and or the phone call from a mother who said, because of your support services, her child had survived. And I still remember that phone call from a woman who said, my son has a friend now, because their little boy had been in play therapy and was learning to kind of mix better and stuff. So days like that, make it all worthwhile.
Absolutely. And I just want to take this little chance to explain to people exactly what meningitis is. So meningitis is basically an infection of the meninges. So they're the protective membrane surrounding the brain and spinal cord. You can have viral or bacterial meningitis. So the viral type initially is just as scary as the bacterial, but usually it's not life-threatening. Bacterial meningitis is extremely, extremely dangerous. It urgently needs antibiotic treatment. And it's something that obviously we vaccinate for in this country. So we have been given the meningitis C vaccine to babies in the primary cycle since 2000. And the Men B vaccine was introduced in 2016. There's also the PCV vaccine, which is also included in the primary immunisation schedule. There are some vaccines which aren't on the main schedule because there is other forms or strains of infection that can cause meningitis. So they would be meningitis A, W, X, Y, and Z. And, the numbers of those have been increasing over the past years on a kind of mild to moderate level, to the point where the ACWY vaccine is now given to children who are in first year of secondary school. So that is, I suppose, the technical breakdown. But Siobhan, do you have anything to add to that just before we move on to the symptoms?
Yeah, so babies and children up to age 5 are the highest risk age group to contract meningitis. 16 to 24-year-olds are the second highest risk age group, and over 65s are the third highest risk age group to contract meningitis in Ireland. But actually, anybody of any age can contract meningitis. You usually see an increase in cases of bacterial meningitis back to school, kind of September, winter time. And there's an increase usually of viral meningitis cases during the summer. But it's really important for people to get to know the signs and symptoms, what to look out for. If you're concerned, get medical help immediately. And the most important thing is to trust your instincts. With the symptoms of meningitis, someone, in the early stages, it can present itself like a flu-like symptoms. But what happens with meningitis is that gradually over hours, someone is getting sicker. And nothing is working, to bring down their temperature or stuff like that. So time is of the essence when it comes to meningitis. Within 6 hours of being sick, we lost Ava to meningitis. And one of the most important things before we go into the symptoms is to ensure that your children's vaccinations are up to date. So there has been a decrease in the uptake of vaccines in the last 2 years, probably due to COVID and people not being able to get access to the doctors and stuff like that. So it's really important that people are aware that it takes 5 visits for your baby to be fully vaccinated with their schedule. And just to ensure that they have completed their full round of the vaccinations, because, being vaccinated is what can save lives. So that's all, that kind of stuff is really, really important when it comes to meningitis. But know the signs and symptoms and trust in your instincts is probably the most important message. I can give today.
And we're all busy, and you can easily fall behind in your vaccine schedule. If you have multiple kids, you can just get a bit kind of lost in it all. But important to emphasize there that you can catch up on vaccines. That just because you've missed one, you just need to go back to your GP and they will do a catch up program for you. All the vaccines are still available.
Absolutely, yeah. And I can talk through the symptoms, I suppose, really.
Yeah.
So people need to remember with meningitis, first of all, that the symptoms can appear in any order. And some of the symptoms may never appear at all. So the misconception for years out there about meningitis, that there always had to be a rash. So the rash is obviously to do with sepsis, which is the blood poisoning, which can go hand in hand with meningitis. But meningitis does not always produce a rash. And if a rash does appear, it's at a very late stage and there's urgent medical attention required, and you need to go, get straight to the hospital if someone's presented with a rash. So, you would have seen how you could do the glass test, where you roll the tumbler over the rash that might appear on the skin, and it does not fade under pressure. That is the rash that you need to be aware of, that does not fade under pressure. And you do need to keep checking if someone is very sick, to make sure that the rash doesn't appear. It can appear in different places in the body, and just keep checking. But with babies and toddlers, I suppose refusing feed, temperature with cold hands and feet, a very high-pitched cry, which is something that a lot of our parents have described over the years, that their babies have presented with high-pitched cry. Very limp, it doesn't like being held, a bulging fontanella, which is the soft spot on top of the head. That's some of the symptoms with babies and toddlers. And with children and adults, fever, headache, vomiting, muscle pain, temperature with cold hands and feet. And really to try and explain it, it's like seeing somebody when they're not usually like this. When they're sick, they can bounce back sooner, or we've heard people describe about this headache that they've never experienced anything like it before in their lives. And that's, we've heard that a lot around the kind of teenage age group. And they, as I say, gradually over hours, gradually getting sicker. Then you need to get medical attention, and if you're very concerned, to go straight to the hospital. And when you go in there, to say, and I've always said this, and this is me as a mum, I'm saying this, say to them, could it be meningitis? Leave that word in their heads and let them, rule it out. Let the medical people rule it out. And you've done everything that you possibly can,
And stiff neck and bright lights.
Yes.
I'm mentioning them because, as I said to earlier, I had viral meningitis as a child, and I definitely experienced those two particular symptoms, but obviously not all, as you said, not all symptoms appear. So it's a bit of a mixed bundle. And that's something I'm really going to take away from talking to you today, that it's really about the progressive illness, the kind of rapid deterioration. So the importance of keeping a close eye on a child that's sick and getting worse, and just, if in doubt, just act. There's just no one is ever going to give out to you for bringing your child to hospital because you're worried.
Absolutely.
People are there to help you. It's their job. You're
you,
never annoying anyone.
You know your child best. You know your child best. You know what they're like when they're sick. And even as teenagers or adults, you know something's not right. You need to trust your own instincts, believe in yourself, and just be the voice for your child. Just say they're not usually like this when they're sick. They usually bounce back, or they can't get the temperature down, and I'm not here to, to frighten people. It's not here. It's to make people aware that they know that, meningitis is out there. And just to be aware of what to look out for, to trust your instincts is so important, but not to scare people. But, ensuring your children's vaccinations are up to date and being aware of the signs and symptoms and acting if you have concerns are the most important things you can do when it comes to meningitis.
Yeah, I think, it nearly needs to become part of your assessment process. So I always call things like this because I'm a pharmacist. So that's what we do in work, If someone comes in with a rash, I'm gonna run through every type of illness, to rule them out based on how the rash is looking. But as a mum, I don't think anyone needs to be a pharmacist to do this. So, you're looking at things like fever. You're looking at things like, is your child alert or overly drowsy or confused? Have it in there that you're looking for meningitis. Every time a child gets sick, look for meningitis, rule it out and then go on to, no, it's an ear infection, it's a throat infection.
Yeah.
Or they're actually just cranky, but just have it as part of your process that every time your child is sick, just rule it out, make
Absolutely.
sure.
And also it's a big thing for the student age group, I suppose, to empower them to mind their friends when they are away from home and they're staying in digs or they're staying, on campus and college, and to make them aware, to mind your friends, check on them. A lot of the time you would hear that it can present the symptoms as a really bad hangover, in that age group, and they've been out the night before and they're just really unwell and they're not, just check on your friend when you're in college and you're sharing a room or you're sharing a house with them. Are you okay? Do you need anything? How are you feeling now? Because they don't have the support of their parents or guardians or whoever around them.
Yeah.
And at that age you think you're invincible.
Yeah.
And you're living your best life. So just to keep an eye on your friends when you're not at home, if they're sick.
That's such an important point. One more thing, the prevalence now. So how common is meningitis at the moment?
So what we have seen, obviously, a decrease in case of meningitis since the vaccines have been introduced. And then in the last 2 years, obviously, when people were locked away at home during COVID and everything like that, and people weren't mixing because obviously meningitis is airborne, so it spread through coughing and sneezing, and people weren't mixing. There wasn't that many cases, thankfully, for us. But once the country kind of opened again, we have seen cases appearing, and a significant increase in cases of viral meningitis have been occurring in the last probably since January, February. So, and now we're coming into the winter months. People are coming down with colds and flus. Their immune systems will be weaker, so they're more susceptible to picking up other kind of infections that are out there. So, we would expect to see cases again, slightly rising in the coming months. So now more than ever, it's so important that people don't confuse symptoms of COVID or flu and symptom with which could be meningitis. So to make themselves aware, because I see a very challenging few months coming ahead, with the weather and all that kind of stuff. So people just need to,
there's a lot of
be alert. Yeah, stay aware. Yeah.
Lack of immunity from kind of 2.5 years of, has it been 2.5 years? I don't know how many years I've lost now at this stage. One big
last, yeah.
Yeah. But so we don't have the same resistance to things like flu, where some people obviously will just suffer mild doses. So we haven't built up that natural immunity. So it could be messy. One thing just to highlight there as well, obviously the difference between viral and bacterial meningitis. So we know that the difference is that bacterial meningitis, has a much higher mortality rate, and also can cause permanent damage. So we know that viral obviously is less likely.
It's non-threatening. It's not non-life-threatening. But
the problem is they present the same.
They do at the early stages, yeah. Yeah.
So when I suppose the important thing is to react quickly regardless. There is only one way to find out if you have viral or bacterial meningitis, and that's by attending the hospital realistically. Mm-hmm. So
and people need to understand as well that with meningitis, sadly 1 in 10 who contract it will die, and 1 in 3 to 5 are left with long-term life-changing side effects.
That's bacterial. Yes.
Bacterial, yeah.
Yes.
And then with viral, what I feel is probably taken not as seriously as, but with someone, there can be a long road to recovery after viral as well. And you see people with chronic exhaustion and headaches and different kind of side effects after viral. So people need to know that they need to give themselves time, and they need to rest and give themselves time to recover. And I suppose that's where we are. That's where the charity is there to step in to support. So what we do is we have an amazing, amazing support officer, Emer, and she's there to give you support. So if, some people just want a phone call, they just want to talk to somebody, and talk through what they've been through. It can be extremely traumatic, after being affected by meningitis, and not just the person that's been affected, but their siblings, the parents who have this fear that their children were sick, or siblings who had a brother or sister who have been in hospital for weeks and they haven't seen them and they have this fear. So we're there to support the whole family for as long as they need. And we have a wide range of support services available for them. And we also run workshops, online support workshops for parents who have been through, such a traumatic time. And then, of course, we're there also to support our wonderful bereaved families who I suppose are on the same journey as me, for a chat or a catch up, or a lot of the time they want to do something to remember the person, that they've lost. And we like to be able to help them, support them if they like to do it in the community, do something to remember them. And a lot of the time, no more than us, they want to create awareness.
And how can people support your charity? For people, who have been, say, untouched by meningitis, but listening to you today, are just so moved by the work that you're doing.
One of the big things for us is to get our awareness into communities. And if someone wants to contact us through our social media, or, and leave a message, to something as simple as to go to their local pharmacy and distribute our awareness cards. We often send out packs to secondary schools, and someone there takes charge and they distribute awareness card, and one goes home in every school bag. We're available to do awareness talks. I do awareness talks. I do paramedic training for trainee paramedics. I do pharmacy training, which is all available. Everything's free. It's all available. I do a lot of talks for kind of senior years in secondary schools, like to catch them at TY or Leaving Cert before they go into college, to make them meningitis aware. I can do talks in the workplace, talks for people's wellness days, to make people aware, and for every person to have one of our awareness cards, or are as aware of meningitis. Or some people who hold events for us, if they want to hold a fundraising event for us, and we'll come down and support them and meet people. So, any kind of support is greatly appreciated, especially in the last few years with what we're trying to do. We're the only charity in Ireland, the only meningitis charity in Ireland. And the last few years have been so challenging, no more than any other charity or any business. It's been so challenging for so many people. We're going to keep fighting to try and get that awareness out there, because it can save lives. And we want people to know that they're not alone when they've been affected by meningitis. So that's what we're going to keep doing for as long as we can.
So the website is just Act for Meningitis.
Act for Meningitis, yeah. Our social media, Facebook and Instagram is Act for Meningitis. And then our Twitter is Act4 Meningitis. And even a simple post that goes up and someone shares it on their page is making an extra person aware about meningitis, and the misconceptions that are out there that meningitis always produces a rash, that kind of messaging, to correct that message. I think that was the biggest shock for so many people when I did the talk over the years, was there has to be a rash, or only babies can get meningitis. There was so much confusion out there. So those kind of things, a simple share, it could save a life. Sheena, could save a life.
I suppose we can ask anyone who's listening to this today to share it with every single person that
yeah.
Well, I was going to say who actually has a child or a family, but that doesn't even make sense. Everyone, because every age group is affected by meningitis. So I would beg people to just spread the word. I think you've given us some incredible wisdom today. And your story just is so moving. And I'm so happy that Ava has such a strong legacy. And I'll never look at that rainbow on the logo again now without smiling, because I just think you can do nothing more positive than to turn such a horrible story of grief into something that is enabling other children to avoid such trauma and other families. So just thank you so much on behalf of all parents and everyone for being so brave and strong and standing up, because really and truly it is saving lives.
Ava loves life. She sang, she danced, she shopped her way through life, she painted her nails. We did everything together. And to honour her 4 short years that she had with us, but to remember her and the impact she had. She was always going around minding the small little children, holding their hands, getting them up the stairs, looking after them. And she was a kind, gentle soul. And it's so important for me, that she'll be remembered. It's been a long, long road, but she's with me every day. I talk to her every day. I'm sure I have her plagued a lot of the time. But she's sitting there beside me and she's definitely guiding me.
4 short years, it may seem like, but an absolute long lifetime of impact. Thank you so much, Siobhan. Okay, you've heard it, people. You need to share this story because it's so, so important. Anyone you know that could benefit from being a little bit more meningitis aware, just to get them to have a little listen. Thanks very much, Siobhan, for joining us today.
Thanks, Sheena.
If you enjoy listening to a WonderBaba podcast, I'd be really grateful if you could follow or subscribe and leave a review. It really helps to support the show. Thank you.